Alright, so let's set up the lab for the installation of the ESXi. So I will let's open my workstation server. So in the workstation now, I already have an test ESXi which I deployed for the previous lab. I will use the same thing now. Now here you see that I'm using the 16 GB, so I will bring up the calculator and calculate what is the 14 GB because I want my resources to be should be 14, that is 14336. So I will just go back here and I will say 14336. So that should give me 14 GB. And here I am all good with two virtual CPUs and network adapter. Over here you see that I have management which is on the bridge one, and I will also add the second adapter to the bridge one so that I can have two of them for the load balancing. And now I will add one more hard disk which will be used for the vCenter server, that should be 500 GB. And finish and OK. Alright, that should be all good. Now I will power on the virtual machine. Since we that is already ESXi is already installed, so I should not be having any problem. But what I will do is that I will remove the virtual machines and everything from there first. Then I will completely reinstall the vCenter server. Now, for the vCenter server, the image is an again ISO image. All right, so we are not going to transfer this ISO image to the ES6i. So we will run normally on the Windows machine, on my Windows 11 machine, but it will automatically ask you where do you want the vCenter server to be installed, and we will say that we want to install it on the ESXi so and so. Now the ESXi IP address for this one is 192.168.1.101. So let the server start, and here I will add one more new tab. Right, let it boot. Alright, so once that is been started, let's go ahead and access the ESXi machine now. That is on 101. So I will go to my edge 192.168.1.101. Alright, so I have the access, that is root and voice 123 hash. I have the virtual machines, I will select all of them and I will go to actions and I will just delete that one. Alright, so I have deleted all the virtual machines. So now let's click on register not the VM. So I have to go to the storage, click on new data store, create a new VMFS, and you do have the 500 GB. This one I will say vCenter server, VC, just next, next, and finish, and yes. So the data store is been added. So let's go to the virtual machine. Let's open that image now. This is the one. So I will double click on that one, click on open, and I will go to UI installer, and after that I will go to Windows installer, and here I should see installer.exe, so right click and run as administrator. That's it. So now it will ask you what you want to do. You want to install, upgrade, migrate, or restore. I'm going to install a new vCenter server. So click on next, accept that agreement, click on next. So FQDN or IP address which you want to assign it to, I think this should be the ESXi host where you want the vCenter server to be install 192.168.1.101, and the username will be root, password will be mois123 hash, and click on next. It should get the certificate. You will trust that one. Click on yes, and it will validate that host now. After validating, what should be the VM name? So I will say vCenter, and I will give a password as mois123 hash and mois123 hash. This is for the root password. So by default, it will be creating a root for your shell access, and you're giving password for that shell access. Click on next. And now it is asking you which deployment. Okay, you see that tiny storage, it is using 579 GB. I thought it was 500, but it is 509. Storage size default. So I will go with the tiny one. If you want to change it to whatever size you want, you can change it over here. Click on next. Not enough memory on host for selected size. Memory 14 GB is required. Okay, it increased from 12 to 14 in the ESX, what do you say, in the version 8. So I think the 16 GB should be good. So I have to go back there. So before that, I will just log off. And also I will do one more thing, that is turn off this machine first. And I did this one, go to the 16 GB, click on OK. And it says 500 GB, right? So I will add a hard disk for one more hard disk, that is just in case if it is says that not enough space, which I don't want. 600 GB, click on next, finish, and OK. So I think what details I have in here is of, what do we say, version 7, I think. So for version 8, it is now 2 GB more extra now, that is 14 GB. So let the ESXi server start now. Okay, it should be starting very soon. And after that, I will just do a refresh so that we do have the ESXi web interface. Okay, that's all good. Now let's go back here, install. Again, it came back here. Now click on next, or back, click on next. 101.1, click on next, yes. Okay. And now if I select Tiny, this time it should show me the data center. So I will select the vCenter server, VC, and I will say enable thin disk mode because I don't want my vCenter server to use the whole 500 GB reserved one. And click on next. And now this is where it is now asking for the vCenter server details, which adapter you want to connect. So On the ESXi host, if you remember, I have created switch 1, 2 and a default one. So I'm connecting to the default one and I'm going to assign the IP address statically. That should be 192.168.1 dot maybe 102 because 101 I have used it. But again, it is asking you for the FQDUN. So what I will say that vCenter dot syslable.com.au. It's just a DNS name which I can create at any time on my Windows server machine, but I will not be using the DNS name, so just giving because I can create that one for you. Subnet mask will be 255.255.0, gateway will be 192.168.1.1, and DNS server will be 192.168.1.100 and 192.168.1.1. So my vCenter server is able to access my local DNS server as well as my internet DNS server, port number 80 and 443. It is trying to connect. Click on next. Now these are the details. So click on finish and now it is going to deploy your vCenter server. So now this shouldn't be taking much time. I think maximum this part will take 5 to 7 minutes, maybe maximum 10 minutes. And the after that we will move to the stage 2. So now this one is the stage 1 where it will deploy the virtual machine on the ESXi host, and the next settings it will ask you how you want to log into the vCenter server and all those things. So maximum this should take 10 minutes and another one should take maybe 10 or 15 minutes. So altogether it should be only 30 minutes or maybe 20 minutes of installation time. Alright, so I will stop the video over here. So once this has been completed until 100, I will be back. Alright, so stage 1 is been now successfully deployed. So let's continue to the stage 2. Click on continue. And now stage 2. So click on next. So time synchronization, we will say that synchronize with the ESXi host. SSH access, yes, keep it as activated because if you have any problem, then you can access the SSH shell. Click on next. So now next option is the single sign-on configuration. So we have a domain, but still I will not add it. We can later on add it also, but at this moment I will not be adding any domain to this vCenter server. All right, so I will say that create a new SSO domain, which is by default vsphere.local. So I will go with the same thing. And I will give the administrator password that should be mois123 hash and alright, so now my username will be administrator at vsphere.local. So click on next. I don't want to join the VMware community. Click on next and this is your details. Please verify that one and click on finish. And now this is where the warning, you will not be able to pause or stop the install from completing once it has started. Click OK to continue. So make sure that your settings are all good and good to go if because from here after until it installs completely you cannot stop the installation. Alright, so again I will stop the video and I will come back once it is 100%. Alright, so finally the vCenter server is being installed. Again, I did one mistake, that is assigning the FQDN, because if you assign the FQDN, make sure that your laptop or PC or your virtual machine is able to resolve that FQDN. If not, on the stage 2 it will just stuck at that point and it will not move forward. So what I did was I reinstalled the vCenter server, but this time I did not provide it the FQDN. I just provided the IP address, so that's why you see that it is giving me the IP address. Now it is successfully been installed. It is asking me to visit to this particular web link. So I will click close and I will come back here and I will say HTTPS 192.168.1.02. Okay, so it's automatically connecting to port number 5480. So I will just go to that, and now you have this web interface of the vCenter server. So click on launch vSphere client, and here we will say administrator at vsphere.local. That is the domain we have provided, and the password will be mois123 hash. And if I go back to my virtual ESXi, you see that it has now installed the vCenter server appliance, that is as a virtual machine, and currently it is using 21.62 GB of storage, and the RAM it is currently using, it's only 713 MB for now. Alright, so now this is your vCenter server web interface, and you see that there are expired license in your inventory. That should be all good. We close that off, and by default you see that there is 192.168.1.102, that is vCenter server itself. And one more thing I want to tell you, that whenever you are finished with your vCenter server, do not shut down your vCenter server in your lab, because you sometimes the time will not synchronize and the vCenter server will not start up. So it's better you always suspend the virtual machine until you finish your practice. So once you finish your practice, then you can power off the virtual machine, that is vCenter server. Alright, so our vCenter server has been installed now, and I hope this was informative for you, and thank you.